Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy.
Really? Because you tried to kill him in the last game. How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another discussions video. Now, today's video, if you couldn't really tell, is all about the Funtime animatronics and kind of determining whether they're haunted or not. Now, Circus Baby is possessed by Elizabeth Athen. I just want to say that because there might be some confusion in me thinking that maybe that's not. But we'll get into why it's more of a gray area here in the video, because while Elizabeth does possess Circus Baby, it's a bit grayer, especially in sister location, than people tend to often think that it is. But the general question that we're going to be answering is whether or not, at least for the rest of the Funtimes, whether they're actually haunted, or if they happen to just have remnant but are only controlled by an AI intelligence, that's the same thing, of some sort. So that's the question. We're gonna be answering that. Let's just get on into this. But before we really get into things, be sure to like and subscribe, because I want you to, and I'm telling you to, so go do that. And just a little quick plug there, but we'll get into things actually now. And I want to start off with talking about the Funtimes, who they are, what do they do, and kind of just some things behind their characters and animatronic designs to kind of set a basis or some ground rules, so we kind of know what we're talking about with these animatronics. So let's just get right on into things with talking about the Funtimes themselves. Alright, so before we really get into the, main part of the theory as to whether the Funtimes are haunted or not, I thought it would only make sense to talk about the Funtimes themselves, kind of go over what they do, go through each of them, and kind of just see what they're all about. What are the Funtimes really all about? So I want to cover their purpose and then stuff like that. So their purpose, everybody knows the purpose of the Funtime animatronics. We don't really need to get into it, but if we had to, you could go on Family Feud and Steve would be like, what are the purpose of the Funtime animatronics? And you'd be like, to capture kids, Steve. And Steve would be like, huh? And it'd be the number one answer. So that's what their purpose is. William Afton designed them for going out, well, initially for the restaurant to capture kids, and then, it became the rental service and the whole kit and caboodle. We don't really need to get into it that much, but that is the general purpose of the Funtime animatronics. And so who are the Funtime animatronics? So I've kind of split them into two distinct groups. You have the distractors, the ones that are there to distract and lure and kind of be the sort of supporting animatronics. And then you have the extractors, which are the ones that are supposed to actually, do the capturing and actually do that stuff. So the animatronics in the distractors category are Funtime Foxy, Ballora, Funtime Chica, and the helpers, which I've put as the mini arenas and the bitty babs, the little supporting characters that aren't any of the main animatronics. So these guys' jobs are to distract, lure, and all around just support the other two main Funtime animatronics. So for example, Funtime Foxy's purpose seems to be to lure kids towards either Freddy or Circus Baby, and then he has a built-in tail smell thingy. I don't know, it's kind of weird, but it seems like he's designed to also cover up anything that may have happened so that people don't know that there's something funky going on here. And other characters like Chica, they're the center of attention. They're designed to be like, hey, look at me over here, don't look over there. So she's more in line with distracting people from what's going on behind them, sort of a deal. And that kind of works too with Ballora, the mini arenas, the bitty babs. They're all kind of there to just support and distract people from what's really going on. And that's where the extractors come in, and that's Funtime Freddy and Circus Baby. Their jobs are to actually do the capturing and are sort of the main head animatronics of what's going on here. and both are relatively independent of each other and of the rest of the band. While they both need the band to support what they do, Funtime Freddy actually seems like he could manage on his own. He has Bon Bon, which acts as like a little look around 360 tracker kind of a character. So he's like the eyes while Freddy focuses on whatever he needs to do. He also has like proximity sensor kind of a thing where he can like count how many people are in a room, which is obviously helpful for what he needs to do. And obviously he has his built-in storage tank, quote unquote, and we all know what that's used for, but he seems to actually be able to do the capturing and stuff relatively on his own. And a key thing here that will come up a little bit later in the video, it's not as important, but it is a little bit, is that he is a relatively independent animatronic. Whereas people like Ballora, Funtime Foxy, they all have some connection that Circus Baby controls about them. Like, for example, Funtime Foxy has a floor anchor that Circus Baby can activate, and that basically stops Funtime Foxy in place. Funtime Freddy has no connection to Circus Baby, so he's relatively independent on his own. And speaking of the Circus Baby, she's also in here. She's one, like, probably the most important one. She controls all but Funtime Freddy, and her job, I guess, was to be like the head of the band and also to be a capture person. She can go around and capture. She has a big claw. This is the one thing I don't get. You know, Afton at the start of Sister Location, he's like explaining away some of the features. If I was on the board of Fazbear Entertainment, I'd be like, dude, how are you gonna explain a big old claw, right? Like, you got a storage tank, sure. You got a little hand that passes out ice cream, yeah, okay. What about this big old claw? What is this used for? So, kind of a little bit of a side tangent there, but Circus Baby has like a huge claw and all these different features to help her actually do the capturing. And so that's kind of a basic rundown of all the Funtime animatronics. I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but one last kind of detail that's actually really important for later on in the video, and it's really the best to bring it up here, is the scooper. And so while it's not technically a Funtime animatronic, it does have to do with Sister Location and has to do with how the Funtimes work. And like I said, will be important later on. And we know that the scooper is used to scoop out the innards of the Funtime animatronics and are also used for like remnant extraction and stuff like that. So it's important for later on, but I thought it would make the most sense to mention that here. And yeah, that's kind of it for all the Funtimes, what they do, all the basic rundown information of them that we need to know for later on in the video. But before we really talk about the rest of the Funtime animatronics, obviously the main one we have to talk about is Circus Baby herself. So we'll start talking about her here in a second. Alright, so I'll try to keep this section relatively brief because I mainly want to talk about the other Funtime animatronics and not Circus Baby, but we can't really look at the other ones without actually talking about Circus Baby, who is the only animatronic, at least Funtime animatronic, that we know is actually possessed. So again, I'll try to keep this brief, but she's a good example as to what a Funtime animatronic would look like being possessed. But it's kind of hard to use her as like a full-on example because she's a very unique case, especially with the fact that she kind of completely changes between games. And we'll talk about that very briefly, but she's on the one hand very helpful in figuring out how Funtime possession would look, but on the other hand, it's also kind of difficult to use her for that because she's just such a unique, different case to the rest of the Funtimes. So we'll get into things here, and we'll kind of talk about her in Sister Location and then her in Pizza Sim and kind of compare the two. So in Sister Location, she talks very much like Circus Baby centric. She's not very Elizabeth Afton-y. She's very much Circus Baby, both in how she tells stories, how she talks to the player. She refers to Elizabeth as a separate person, often referring to her as, well, her, and not ever really talking from her perspective. When she gives the backstory of Elizabeth getting taken, captured, clamped, whatever you want to say, she talks in the perspective of Circus Baby, and she goes like, you know, I was in the room, there was the kids, I was counting, and then there was like, oh, and then there was one, and then something bad happened to me. And so she talks from her perspective and not Elizabeth's perspective. And this also carries over into Ender Night, which is really the only time she talks as Elizabeth. However, that is as a last resort because things are getting desperate. It's 4 a.m. Ender starts going a little wacky. He starts getting a bit quirky, and so Circus Baby pulls out her last resort, which is Elizabeth Afton, and tries to use her voice to, I guess, coax who she thinks is William into opening the doors for her, which is kind of stupid, but she only ever uses Elizabeth as a, like, last resort, but only ever refers to her as a different person. They're not the exact same person. Circus Baby's AI, or something with Circus Baby, is far more powerful and more prominent than Elizabeth's spirit. But that changes when you get to Pizza Sim, because in Pizza Sim, all of a sudden she starts talking about how she's Elizabeth Afton, and she goes from wanting to kill William to serving him, and it's a way 180 change in how she acted, talked, whatever, with how she was in Sister Location. And while some people may try to attribute that to like the Ennard band breakup or AI intelligence, I did it again. I said AI intelligence. It's the same thing. The AI like chip, personality chip stuff. It's really complicated. There's no need to try to explain away Circus Baby's change in Pizza Sim because it's already explained for us in the Fourth Closet. That's all you need to know. The Fourth Closet book was being written at the same time as Pizza Sim, and so Circus Baby in the Fourth Closet acts like Elizabeth. She talks like Elizabeth. She is Elizabeth Afton / Charlie. It's a very complicated mess, but she talks like Elizabeth in the book. And so what did they do in the games? Well, they changed Circus Baby into Elizabeth Afton. And that's really the only thing that makes them different, is the fact that she was written off as pretty much a different character. And that explains why she acts so different. And that's kind of basically it for Circus Baby. And this is why I'm saying it's kind of hard to use her as a prime example for Funtime hauntings, because she acts basically the exact opposite between games. In one game, she's talking as an AI who is kind of possessed, but is mostly just an AI robot, versus the next game where she just is a spirit possessing an animatronic. So she's very different between games, and it's kind of hard to use her as like solid evidence for the rest of the Funtimes, but I figured as a Funtime possession haunting video, you kind of have to bring her up, and there's some interesting points, at least in Sister Location, to kind of show that the Funtimes are kind of difficult to actually possess, which you would think William would want to make sure it doesn't happen to them. But since we're talking about the other Funtimes, this is where we're going to actually get into that part of the video. So this next section is all about the other Funtimes. Alright, so main question of the video: are the Funtime animatronics haunted? Well, the answer to that question is a pretty resounding yes, with multiple different reasons as to why we know that they are haunted. And this is like not just a theory, that is a fact that we know that they are haunted based on all the remnant that they have. However, throwing a little twist on here, they are not possessed. And that might seem a little bit weird. That might seem like I'm doing like a counter, negating my own point. I don't know. What do you use for that? I might be like answering a question with a yes and a no, but that is kind of what I'm doing. The Funtime animatronics are haunted, but they're not possessed. And it's actually kind of more straightforward than we would think. And it has to do with a little thing known as the scooper. That's almost like I brought the scooper up earlier in the video because it actually pertained to this section here. So we know that the scooper is designed to scoop out remnant from the animatronics, but it's also used to infuse things with Remnant as well. It's kind of weird. It does both. And it also may be in some way like the Remnant gets left on the scooper, and then the scooper is used again, and then the Remnant goes into whatever the scooper is used on again. So it might not be completely intentional, but the blueprints kind of make it seem like it is intentional. So the scooper can both remove and infuse things with Remnant. Now, we know that the Funtime animatronics have had a history of being scooped and even combining together. Maybe they have talked about how, well, Circus Baby talks about how they have tried to escape before and they've been caught and, you know, forced back into their roles before. Now, it's not entirely explained whether or not they've actually formed Ennard multiple times, or if they've just tried to escape as their animatronic selves and then were just clearly caught. It's not entirely, you know, explained. We don't know that much about their previous escape attempts, but we know that they've tried. And this would also mean that probably they've gotten scooped, especially if they had formed Ennard of some kind before. They would get scooped, all their parts scattered again, and then remade into the Funtime animatronics again, which would imply that a lot of parts are probably mixed together, put together with different animatronics, and thus would make sure that their remnant is spread through all of them, and in twisting whatever spirits or agony may be left behind between all of the Funtime animatronics. And that may even include Elizabeth Afton. Now, we know that as of Pizza Sim, and I've already talked about this, that Elizabeth is completely there. She knows who she is, and she's back. She knows exactly who she is. Even though Henry asked if she remembers her name, I'm assuming she would. So Elizabeth is still there. But how Circus Baby acts in Sister Location could explain why Elizabeth Afton isn't there, right? Like, them having all of their parts and remnants and potentially even souls spread throughout all of the Funtime animatronics could explain why their AI is so much stronger than whatever souls would be connected to them. If they're all spread apart and all combined together, so like, let's say there's, I don't know, 5 souls, but not the 5 missing children souls, then they would be spread across all of the Funtime animatronics. Well, it's going to be kind of hard for a soul to possess something when it's in 5 different places, so we could easily see that that's what's happening here. The souls, the agony, the remnant is spread between all of the Funtime animatronics, thus kind of resulting in them being not as powerful. And I also would imagine William Afton would probably have some sort of contingency plan, I'm not exactly sure, some sort of design in the Funtime animatronics that would probably make sure that they don't get fully possessed. Because if I were William Afton and I realized that if a kid is shoved into an animatronic suit and goes on to possess it, I'm going to make sure that if I'm still, going out and capturing kids, that they, that they don't go on to possess the robots, because then they're going to try to kill me, even though they try to kill them anyway. But I would, if I were William Afton, I would make sure that they could not go on to possess my new state-of-the-art capturing robots, because that would kind of be against the point of what you're trying to do. And thus, I think that the Funtime animatronics are indeed haunted but not possessed. Now, that was kind of quick and maybe a little bit rambly, which is what I tend to do here on discussion videos. So I'll try to kind of simplify it here in some neat little words. So the Funtime animatronics, remnant spread between all of them, agony, I almost said raggedy like I was thinking Scooby-Doo, agony and souls spread between all of the Funtime animatronics because of the fact that they've been scooped and put back together over and over and over and over again. And we also kind of get this with the Ennard, the little Ennard teaser where he's like, there's a piece of me in every body. Now, we know that he's talking about Ennard himself and how he's made up of all of the Funtime animatronics, but that also kind of works with the fact of, like, the souls or remnant in all of the Funtime animatronics are in all of them until they become entered, and then they're all back together. So the Funtime animatronics are haunted. They are made out of haunted metal, and thus, you know, kind of past the mark of being haunted animatronics. But they're not possessed because, aside from Scrap Baby, none of the Funtime animatronics act like they're possessed by one singular soul. And I made sure to say Scrap Baby because Circus Baby acts like Circus Baby and not Elizabeth. So the Funtime animatronics do not act like any one soul, but they act like actual robots. And thus, they're haunted, but not possessed. So that's kind of it for everything, really. It's kind of straightforward when you kind of think about it. I also was kind of very simplified with what I was talking about, and that's because it's actually pretty simple. So anyway, that's kind of it for the main theory. I know it's not like a very long chunk of the video, but I feel like it doesn't really need to be. But anyway, one last thing I want to talk about. It's its own little section here, but I want to bring up Molten MCI because you can't really talk about Funtime possession without talking about Molten Freddy and Molten MCI. And so that's what we're going to be talking about this next section, and how I've already made a whole video on this, but it's just straight up not possible. So I'm going to keep this section relatively brief, at least I'll try to, because I've already made a whole video on this topic, and I would recommend just watching that if you want my full thoughts on how Molten MCI can't be a thing. So like I said, I'd watch that so that you get my full thoughts on this, but there were a little bit of, I guess, some more pieces of evidence that I didn't bring up in that video because I didn't know about it at the time, and some new stuff that I've learned since then, because that was like 4 or 5 months ago. And so I've done a little bit more research, a little bit more digging, and I've come up with a bit more evidence to support Molten MCI not being a thing. And so I thought this would be a good place to kind of share those thoughts. So first of all, where does the idea of Molten MCI come from? Well, we know that it primarily comes from the fourth closet. Now you might be thinking, well, Ryan, doesn't Candy Cadet in Pizza Sim talk about 5 things being stitched together? Well, yes, he does. But it's not alluded to about what he's doing or who those 5 things are. As a matter of fact, maybe those 5 things are supposed to be the 5 animatronics that were supposed to exist in the game. Maybe. We'll get to that here in a second. I'm talking about Logbook Chica. But Candy Cadet, you know, he talks about those 5 things. So maybe that's where the idea comes from, the 5 missing children. Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're wrong, because the idea where this comes from is actually the fourth closet, because in the fourth closet book, the Funtime animatronics, which are only like 2, because there's Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy, Bellora's not there, literally nobody else is there except for the fourth closet, Charlie, Baby, Elizabeth, whatever. So really it's Funtime Foxy and Funtime Freddy, and they are actually infused with the spirits of the original missing children. And it's like this whole weird plot line, and one of the characters, Carlton, has to, like, he gets infused by Remnant and then is also haunted by this ghost. It's really weird. And so people kind of get the idea from there. I really think that that's where the idea came from, since it's kind of told to us in the book. And so people take that idea and they put it in the games. Now, the hard part is that the fourth closet is arguably like the worst place to get any information about Five Nights at Freddy's from, only because it's a really bad book. It's not good. It doesn't line up with anything, even in its own, like, you know, book trilogy. It discredits a lot of things that happened in previous books, and it makes no sense with even within its own book. It makes no sense. Like, it'll bring up something one time and then never bring it up again and contradict it. It's really weird. So it's a very uncredible source of information, and the only reason I feel like the Funtimes are dragged in there is because they dragged Circus Baby in there, and the only reason the Funtimes are haunted by the missing children is because Scott wanted it to. There's really no like rhyme or reason, so I think that it's not a good source to take information from. So just because it happened in the fourth closet, it doesn't mean it happened in the games. That's kind of what I'm saying. And so that's where it comes from. Now, how does this tie back into Pizza Sim? Because this is where I kind of want to talk about this. So in Pizzeria Simulator, there were supposed to be 5 animatronics. We know this from in the code. There is, code set out for 5 animatronics. One of them isn't there, and it's not like a, test or anything like that. Like, it's a cut animatronic. We also know that Logbook Chica was supposed to be set up as a hint for Pizzeria Simulator, and then she just didn't show up. Now, there is a decent amount of evidence to show that Logbook Chica was supposed to be in Pizzeria Simulator, with the fact that, there was a whole minigame with Susie in it. And since Susie haunts Chica, it would make sense to have Chica in the game if Susie has a minigame, right? Kind of similar to how Lefty's in the game and the puppet gets its own minigame. And then whatever the heck happened with Midnight Motorist, maybe it's Henry, maybe it's some other kid, who knows. Midnight Motorist is not William Afton. I will die on that hill, but that's a whole topic for a different time. But it definitely seemed like Logbook Chica was supposed to be in the game, or like Scrap Chica, whatever you want to call her. Just based on some evidence like that. Missing animatronic, Susie got a minigame, definitely seemed like she was supposed to be there, but she gets cut. Now, technically she's not in the game, so lore can kind of change because she's not there. However, the intention behind it shows that Mullen MCI gets completely debunked, because if Susie's haunting Chica, how can she be in Molten MCI? How can she be in the Funtime animatronics if she's still haunting Chica? Even though, the idea is that Afton would have dismantled them and melted them down and fused them into the Funtimes. That's the whole idea. So Susie still exists. Molten MCI cannot happen. And I think the intention behind it was that the whole Molten MCI is just not a thing. So I think that kind of settles that. We're going to just call it here. I'm kind of done talking about Molten MCI. Again, like I said, I made a whole video on it. I'd recommend checking that out. But we're going to be kind of wrapping up the video here. And like we usually do here on the channel, the summary section is a bit fun. There's usually some voice acting. It's usually almost like a little bit of a skit. It's kind of fun. And so I hope you guys enjoy this one, because that's what's coming up next. And I hope you guys really enjoy it, because it's going to be a really fun one. So I'll see you on the flip side.
Hello again, and welcome back to your night shift technician job here at Circus Babies. You've been doing a good job so far, but today we'll test your skills. We've got a special job for you to take care of. Funtime Freddy had a very busy day, and has even brought back some unwanted material, stuck in his stomach hatch. He will need to be moved to the scooping room so we can remove the extra material. We trust you'll be able to complete your job. Good luck, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Oh, great. Of course I have to go do this. Alright, I'll head over to Parts and Service and get Freddy opened up for the scooper. Jeez, I can't believe I'm the one that has to do this, of all people. This is only my 3rd day here on the job. I haven't even been here that long. You would think that maybe a more professional person would want to be here to actually oversee this rather than just having me, but whatever. I don't get paid enough to do this crap. Oh good, his faceplates are open already. Means a little bit less work for me to do. Alright Freddy, let's see what you got carried with you. Hope it's not like a birthday cake or anything like that. Stick up your whole system. What the heck was that? Okay, anyway. Dang it, why'd the lights go out? Oh, this place sucks. Somebody needs to maintain this place. Why is the door locked? Who's locking me in here? Man, these doors suck. Who puts a lock on the other side of the door? Whatever. Probably just a prank by the rest of the technicians. Hello again! What the heck was that? Where's Freddy? This can't be happening. This has to be a prank.
I see you over there in the dark.
All right, guys, very funny. I see what you're doing. You programmed Freddy to scare me. Just open up the door and let me out of here so I can go home.
Oh, Bon, go get him.
What the? No!
Good job on completing your job for tonight. Finish up the rest of the work and you can head home after that. You will receive $5 of additional pay just for today. We thank you for your work and we hope you look forward to a continuing career here at Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals.
So I hope you enjoyed that summary section. I'm thinking about just changing the name to a skit section, only because it makes more sense to call it a skit section than it does to call it a summary section, because it doesn't really summarize anything, if I'm going to be honest. So I'm thinking about just changing that, but I've already recorded the most of this video and edited it, so I don't really feel like going back and changing that. So just thought I'd say that here. So probably going forward, it's going to be a skit section. But I hope you enjoyed it. Had some good voice acting from yours truly, and special guest voice acting from my friend David, who is on the channel every so often. And hopefully, as of recording this, I think we're planning on it. Maybe he might be joining me for tonight's live stream, so that'll be fun. And yeah, so just a big shout out and thank you to him for doing that. And yeah, anyway, we're kind of getting to the end of the video, so we'll do what we usually do at the end of discussion videos and kind of just do our run through of things. So over on my community tab, I will have a topic poll for my next discussion video, and I got a few different options on there that I think will be interesting. So our first option is going to be a FNAF animatronic redesign series, I guess you could call it, where I would go through different FNAF games, maybe not all of them, but different FNAF games, and kind of like redesign the animatronics to make them more improved, or make them make more sense, stuff like that. And so the first one up on that series is Pizza Sim. So if you guys want to vote on that one and make it like a my next discussion video be about redesigning the Pizza Sim animatronics, then that would be the option for you. But the second option is, I think personally for me, a bit more of a fun one, and it's a rewriting FNAF series. And so in this series, pretty much similar to the redesigning one, I'll go through the different FNAF games and like rewrite them to make more sense, or to just, I don't know, be a little bit better. And kind of similar to the first option, my first one here is going to be rewriting Pizzeria Simulator, just because there's a lot of issues with that one, and I got some good ideas on what could maybe improve it. So if you guys want me to rewrite Pizza Sim, I'd vote on that option. And the last one is a FNAF Fazbear Frights book series review, because I have actually read all the books. And so if you guys want me to do like a big review on the good books, because there are some good ones, and a review on the bad books, because there's a lot of bad ones, then vote on that option, and that would be the one I choose. So definitely go vote on one of those options. And yeah, anyway, since we're getting to the end here, we'll do what we usually do. We'll do our shameless plugs. Go check them out. My Instagram and my channel membership are down below, so feel free to check out either of those if you want to. And especially the channel membership one, because you get some fun perks, like more specifically, a very common perk is a shout out in every video. So here's the shout out to my current channel members. Thank you guys so much for being my members. It really means a lot to me, and here is your daily shout out. And yeah, with that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And for your question of the day, what do you guys think about my theory? Do you guys think the Funtime animatronics are possessed in the same way that I think they are? Or do you think that they're actually haunted by individual spirits? Or are you one of those people that still think Molten MCI is actually a thing? So just comment your answer down below if you made it this far in the video. And at that, I will see you in tonight's live stream. Goodbye.